One minute she thinks you're a clown, the next minute she thinks you're awesome, the next minute she's repulsed by you. What do women think about you? It really varies minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, year to year. And we've seen this even in marriages where it's like people to be together for 4 or 5 years, suddenly they're engaged, they go through the engagement, all this kind of stuff. Then they end up getting married. She posts the photos on Instagram, and then guess what? Oh, this guy's boring. We grew apart. So we've seen it even in that situation. It's literally like they're getting married for the day and to check it off of their sort of laundry list of things to do versus actually being in love, creating a wholesome relationship, and creating a family. And this actually becomes a very, very worrisome and very dangerous situation for a lot of men out there who would like to start a family and have been wanting to go down that path. Now, who is to blame, men or women? So I would say both sides can take partial blame, and then partially kind of the way like laws are written, that it's not necessarily that was the intended outcome. It was to maybe support someone in need, but ultimately, it ends up kind of quote unquote backfiring, or it ends up being a byproduct of the situation. For instance, the divorce laws. The way the divorce laws are obviously set up, it is advantageous for the women oftentimes to just go ahead and get a divorce, get the alimony, get the child support, get the guy out of her life. She's disgusted by him, and then she can hang out with more athletic, more fit, more good-looking guys, and her ex can basically support her from afar. And this new guy could potentially support her. She could have multiple guys supporting her, and it ends up partially being part of this dual dating strategy scenario, which is very, 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 very strange in some respects as far as where our society's at, as far as that goes. Now, that being said, you have to be a Great Gatsby type character, and I've kind of detailed this in some of my other videos, but you have about 20 to 30 facets that you need to create to where you're a mystique. Don't share too much. Be a mystery. Women like to watch these murder mysteries on Netflix, and read murder novels and mystery novels and all this kind of stuff. So, and in general, men like this like psychologically, men like this as well, as far as that there's some kind of mystique. Have you ever seen like a guy who maybe successful, and then you're like, yeah, what, how did he become successful like that? Was it money from his parents? Is he self-made? And you're just curious in general. So you have to create that kind of character for these women. And your first qualifier is obviously going to be your face, your build. You want to have this Superman taper. You want to have, lean, and what I've even found out for myself. So I'm 6 foot, so 6 foot 205 is a very, very, very good weight for me. My face thins up some more. Right now I'm actually 215 as I'm making this video. I have more power. I've had my most power as far as like in the weight room and stuff, hitting power, throwing power, all that kind of stuff, at 220 though. But that is not that's not as an aesthetic of a look. I'll still have abs at 215, 220. But my face is not as thin, and having my shirt on, it actually looks like maybe I'm kind of chubby, or I'm sort of chubby jacked. Whereas 205, things thin up, and if it did get back down to 200, I'd feel like I'd lose a lot of power in the weight room. But I think that actually 200 would probably be a good like aesthetic weight for me for women, for the dating scene and all that kind of stuff. So now, again, your first qualifier, you have to go in, and so things can be you have to use what you're like best suited at, what's your advantage, what's your disadvantage, what's your look, and sometimes even like, let's say if you have a guy as a wingman, what would maybe be kind of like a little bit of your alter ego. I've actually found that good, like, I've actually been in situations where a good wingman for me is kind of like an athletic looking like black dude with maybe like facial hair, with who's not thug, but is kind of this interesting character. He's kind of ends up being sort of a yin yang kind of thing, like a little bit. He kind of looks like this. I don't know. He's like the exact opposite, because I'm white, have blue eyes, and then if he's black, brown eyes, and maybe he has maybe some tats or something like that, and it creates this mystique. Like, wait, how do you guys know each other? And then you can whatever. And maybe it's some situation where it's a guy I played baseball with, or it could have been something else of what the backstory is. So now, that being said, obviously, depending on your situation, whether it's that you came in contact with her through the apps, whether you came in contact with her through Instagram, whether it was in-person game, whether it was on the beach, obviously, your first impressions, not saying too much, being fun, seeming interesting. Obviously on the apps, maybe you have 6 pictures, a few funny things that you could say, if your text game's elite. But again, you don't want to continue these conversations for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. You want to do everything you can to get her to the first date, meet in person. I've even had girls like, wait, why do you want to meet me? Why are you wanting to just all of a sudden like meet me? And it's like, well, we live 8 miles apart. I'm not trying to have a pen pal. Let's just meet up. Let's go over to Applebee's, or let's get a drink over here. Let's do this. So it's kind of one of those things. You want to get them to the date. You don't need to answer a million questions or whatever, because that'll actually hurt you. The longer it goes on, the more ground you lose. And that inlays the issue, because even when we're talking like long-term relationships and stuff, the thing is, a lot of these women, they start trying to check off like, well, what this guy needs to have. Well, I want this guy, I want this guy that works, for Microsoft, or I want this guy who works for Google, or whatever they want. They want this guy with this stable job. But then as soon as they have that type of guy, and maybe they even get married and have kids with them, and then they're just like, this guy's boring. And then they're following some guy's Instagram stories like myself. And it's just so weird. It's just so weird. But a lot of these girls, they'll just like really kind of place, I've had a lot of girls kind of like place me in this sort of curious sort of zone of, they can't stop watching me, and they're kind of always interested in like sort of what I'm doing, because my life is literally probably 100-fold isn't, more interesting than theirs or anybody they really know. And then, that being said, it's just kind of like they don't really, it's sort of like they don't really look at me like a long-term prospect though too, because it's almost like I'm here and there, and I'm back for a week and then I'm gone again. And so, but that being said, they want men to do 98% of the work. So if I'm not reaching out to them, then they're not really considering it as an option per se. It's almost like they're waiting for me to reach out to them after seeing that they watched my story. But then as soon as you do that, then you lost ground. Suddenly it ends up being that, oh, this guy's like so into me. Then it's almost validation to them, like, oh yeah, like he's reaching out to me and these other guys are reaching out to me. And oftentimes these women are just eternally single. They're just always single, always single. They're always sort of talking to guys, but they're never kind of like moving towards, anything that's sustainable or serious. And they kind of can't figure it out. They can't figure out what's going on. But oftentimes it's, obviously their standards are pretty high, that they want this guy who's an 8 or a 9, possibly even 2 or 3 notches above, their actual looks. And then, on top of that, let's say the upper tier girls, that they continue on with this sort of like teasing guys year after year after year after year until, they're well into their 30s. And that's going to continue. That's going to be like a long going trend, that we're going to see that more and more and more. We're going to see more of these women having, you know, kids like into their 40s and stuff like that, which, you know, obviously are going to have to jump through all sorts of hoops and, you know, do all sorts of like in vitro fertilization potentially and all these other things. There's risk involved in that and stuff like that. And I don't really know how many of these women, to be honest with you, really kind of look at it like, you know, I messed up, you know, I really should have stuck with this guy or that guy or whatever in their early to mid 20s. I don't really know. I often wonder that, honestly, you know, about a couple of, you know, relationships that I've been in. And I know one of them for sure, because every time she's drunk, she calls me, you know, and I've answered a few times kind of in the last couple of years or something, but most of the time I don't answer. But that's the thing. When she gets drunk, she's hitting me up. I have other girls that do that. They get drunk, thinking of me, you know. So you have to go by what they do, not what they say. But that being said, guys, this is just kind of further explanation of, you know, what they think about you. It changes all the time. They're very, very jumpy. One minute to another, they're thinking something different. And in the next video I want to make, I want to talk about the only relationships that I've actually ever seen work for long duration. We're talking like for a lifetime sort of thing. But with that being said, subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring that bell icon, and so you'll get the updates for future videos. See you guys later.